Welcome everyone to the 9th day of the 11th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. The course is presented by Northeastern State University, and we have sessions through the end of the day tomorrow. And I'm Bob Bales, and I have the distinction to be your moderator. Of course, all of our sessions are closed caption. We're fortunate to have Michelle doing all the captioning for us. To view her handiwork, just click on the closed caption icon on the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. Now we have a good session. It's best practices for implementing blended learning in large lecture classes, and I'm looking forward to that. We have with us Laura Terry and Maria Salfante. I hope that's right.
That's right.
Both from Grand Canyon University. And let me turn it over to them.
Thank you so much. As Bob said, my name is Laura Terry, and I teach psychology classes here at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona.
And my name is Maria Salfante, and I teach composition courses, English courses here at Grand Canyon also. So our objectives to end, by the way, all the participants that are on here, if you have questions at any point, feel free to just kind of chime in, because we'd like to make this, I know it's hard on a screen, but we're happy to make this as interactive as you'd like it to be, okay? So I thought we'd start with some objectives. It's a good teaching thing to do. Some of the things that we'd like to express to you and share with you over the course of this session. We'll start by talking about blended learning and defining what blended learning is in the literature, and also how we do it at our university, which might be a little bit different. We'll talk about some of the best practices that we use in our lecture style classes. Our classes are relatively large, and we use blended learning to help make them feel smaller. So we'll talk about that. And then maybe we'll have some time to brainstorm how this might work for you, or answer any questions you have about applying it to your own pedagogy.
So just a little bit of background. We, as Maria said, we do teach in larger classrooms. So our classes are anywhere from 90 to 100 students. And so we work really hard to make the classes as interactive as possible, make students want to come to class and engage them, so that they're not just sitting and kind of taking up space. For the last several years, we've had a bigger and bigger challenge every semester with keeping students' attention in these environments with all of the technology that they bring into the classroom with them. And so there are a lot of distractions, not only technological distractions, but they come in with some stuff sometimes that they're dealing with from their outside and personal lives. And so just trying to minimize some of the distractions that they have has been something that we've all been talking about here at the university for a while in terms of our faculty. And so because they have information constantly at their disposal, they tend to often think maybe they don't necessarily need to go to class because they can just read about it and not attend. Or when they do come, they are distracted and they're online or doing other things. And so we know that based on kind of the way that they've been kind of growing up and the environment that they're growing up in, they expect things to be very personalized for them. And when they're not personalized, we tend to lose them. So again, we've been just brainstorming ways that we can kind of fight this, or should we be fighting this, right? Should we even make this a challenge that we kind of tackle every semester? And so in our brainstorming, we kind of decided that maybe blended learning would help to address some of these challenges that students and we are facing every semester.
So before we talk about our own experience with blended learning and how it works in our large lecture classes, I thought we'd set up just some foundational information about blended learning, only because it looks different at different places and there's not really agreed upon definition. Sometimes people think hybrid and blended are the same. So in our understanding, blended learning is really a learner-centered approach, and it kind of blends the best of traditional face-to-face modality with online modality. So it's the best of both worlds, and it can be a really empowering modality for the student. So there's some direct instruction, some lecture time, and also time for that independent exploration, usually through the use of technology. That would happen on the blended day. So when we say blended day, I'll give you an example of what our courses look like. We meet on Tuesday and Thursday, hour and 45 minutes each class. And so in that situation, our Tuesday class would be an in-person lecture class where we do some combination of maybe some group work and some lecture. And then that Thursday is our blended day. That's how we refer to it. And that's the day where they're not mandated to be in class and they get that online meaningful learning experience with technology incorporated into it. So that modality gives better flexibility to both the instructors and also for the students, so they get some flexibility in how they get their work done and where they get their work done, which students really appreciate. But it also gives them the opportunity to do different kind of learning experiences, things that you can't do in a traditional classroom, and it gives them more flexibility, and they take more control of their learning, and they're really responsible for what happens on that blended day. According to the research, between 36 to 50% online, so half blended to 36% to half blended is the best approach, and ours is generally that half. That's where we hit.
So just to recap, like we already kind of indicated, classes are about 90 to 100 students. If we have a Tuesday, Thursday class, we tend to, kind of set the week up for them and provide any type of lecture or instruction that would be needed to complete an online blended learning type of experience on that Tuesday class. And then we would have a blended learning experience for them on Thursday. In Monday, Wednesday, Friday classes, it's done a little bit differently. Sometimes we do a Monday, meeting, and then a Wednesday blended, and then a Friday come back and talk about what they did on the blended day. Or we will have like Monday and Wednesday be the days that we meet face-to-face, and then have that Friday as their blended learning experience. It really depends on the class that's being taught. But during the blended day, what makes our model just a little bit different, some universities will use those days so that they can incorporate other classes into that space during the blended learning day, and we don't do that. We are fortunate to have that classroom space, and so even on the blended learning days, the instructors and sometimes instructional assistants will stay in the classroom. So if students have questions, they need some additional support, they would like to meet face-to-face, it's almost like a built-in office hour for them where they can come in and get that individualized help and attention that they may need. And then if they don't need the extra support, again, they're given the flexibility to kind of make the decision where they want to work, and also decide when they want to work and what they want to be working on. So that is something that we feel fortunate to have the opportunity to have that classroom space. So in order to keep students connected, we're trying to meet them where they are. I just talked a little bit ago about the technology that they use and how that can sometimes be challenging, but we like them to be good users of technology. And so we worked, when we tried to implement this blended learning into our courses, to identify ways that we would be able to communicate with the students when they weren't within the four walls of the classroom. And so we have an LMS that we can obviously use to post announcements and things like that, but maybe this is just a challenge we have here with our students, I'm not sure, but sometimes our students don't go into the LMS regularly, and so we needed to come up with some other ways to keep them on track and accountable during those blended learning days. And so we use checklists. You can see an example of one of my checklists from one of my psychology, general psychology classes in the middle of the screen there. I'll use a checklist and I will post this in the LMS. But then I'll also send it out through Remind, which is a text messaging service, so that they have that on their phones, which never seem to leave them. We also try to use other types of technology as well, social media, to post or to have them post about things that they are doing on those blended learning days is sometimes very useful. And then Loom, we will create or we'll create videos that are feature us, that go through information that we want them to be covering, or maybe just provide some additional instruction, or additional examples. Depending on what's being taught, we can use Loom in a lot of different ways too to connect with them and still personalize the messages that we're sending out to each of those classes.
So as Laura explained our model, one of the perks of our model that kind of sets it apart a little bit, that on the blended day, even though the students don't necessarily have to be in the classroom, it becomes optional in some ways to them. They just have to do the assignment. And if they want to sit in their dorm room and do the assignment, if they want to work from home or at a Starbucks, whatever, they have that option. But one of the things that we really feel makes our model successful is that we're in the classroom that whole time during the blended day. And so we're really accessible to the students if they have a question. I've had students who, start doing the assignment in their dorm room and then they get a little confused. They have a question. And so they just mosey on over to our classroom. They know where I am. They don't have to find my office. It's their classroom that they were in on Tuesday. So they just kind of pop in. They might ask me a question for 10-15 minutes, and then they don't have to stay the whole time. I have other students that come at the beginning of class and sit there for the full time, and they really just get their work done. Sometimes commuter students, they have a class right after, so they don't want to go back and forth. So they just use that almost like a study hall space, and they might work on the blended assignment, but when they finish that, they might start their math homework or something like that. But we find that space to be really good to, number one, build relationships, which can be hard in large lecture classes, but we get to build relationships and meet with them one-on-one when they come in. And it's also I've actually had students on end of class surveys right in there that the blended day was really great because they used it. They came in, they would never come to a professor's office hours because it was too intimidating to go to office hours. But these weren't office hours. They were just you were just in the classroom. And so they felt like it was much more accessible and easier for them to go in on those days. So I've really found the blended time to be great when we're in the classroom.
So one of the things that we recommend is just to let students know where you'll be. If you're going to be having a class where you are kind of releasing them to have flexibility to work where they want, just kind of setting up a space or a way for them to contact you during that classroom time so that if they do have questions, they feel comfortable reaching out. We're aware that not every university has the ability to, open the classroom and let it, available for a class if there's not one being held in there, where students are being required or mandated to come in. So just maybe giving, the students some idea, like I'll be sitting in the library or I'll be in my office, and making sure that they're really aware where that is, or I'll be available by text message or phone or something like that can really help to make the blended learning days run a bit more smoothly. So we were going to share some examples with you on creating or modifying some assignments based on topic and discipline. So like I said, I teach in the psychology department. And so I teach a couple of different classes. I teach a general psychology class, which blended learning works really well for. However, I have to be a little bit more on top of my students in my general psychology class because they are freshmen. And so they need a little bit more guidance and things like that, where those checklists and other ways to reach out and communicate with them become really important to ensure their success. I also teach an upper level capstone class. And so in my upper level capstone class, I have I have mainly junior and senior students, and they are kind of preparing to transition from college to the workplace or to grad school. And so my blended learning looks a little bit different in these classes. I tend to allow them to blend on Fridays because that gives them the opportunity to go out into the community or out onto campus and complete tasks that they need to do in order to prepare for graduation. So one of the things that I do is I like to bring guest speakers in. I teach the career development class in a face-to-face environment, also in an online environment, and then I also have a blended learning class. And so I just gave an example of how I would provide guest speaking information and or these opportunities to meet with professionals in the field based on the modality. So in the traditional class, I would have a guest speaker come in, present about their career, allow students to ask questions during that presentation and make those connections with that speaker. In an online class, I might have students find and share some resources. So if they're in another state or maybe they're just scattered throughout our state, they could find some resources that are specific to their career. Maybe they locate an organization or an individual that they have reached out to and made a connection with. And so they can post that in an online discussion forum and kind of share their experience with that. In a blended learning class, I can actually have the students during our class time or during a time that they choose within that week go and shadow an individual, maybe who is working in the career that they wish to pursue. And then when they come back, they can talk about that experience with the class. And while all of these are beneficial, I find that when they actually are going out seeking someone that they would like to talk with or that they would like to shadow, that becomes a bit more meaningful for them because now they've made that connection on their own. They've gone into an actual working environment and had the opportunity to, explore that environment and determine how comfortable they feel in that environment. And so when they come back, discussions are a lot different when they have to go out and find their own experiences than when I'm bringing someone in or when they're kind of doing it in isolation or maybe through online means.
So for my purposes, I use blended a little bit different because it's, as much as I try, it's a composition class, an English class, and I keep trying to think of really great field trips for them, but that hasn't really worked. So a lot of how I harness the blended day in my composition classes, again, these are mostly freshmen, large lecture freshman classes. What I try to do is use that as a day where they can do some deep thinking, some brainstorming, and really spend time with their thoughts. I know a lot of students, just in talking to students in my classroom, a lot of times if it's a collaborative environment, they have a hard time kind of thinking, like the noise gets to them. So the blended day allows them to really do some deep thinking. And so I'll kind of harness that by giving them opportunities to explore. So one essay that I've used it for is at the beginning of when we're studying the cause and effect essay that they have to write. One of the starter topics I give them is the example of the Flint water crisis. And even though it's happened a few years back, it's still something in process. All the results haven't been figured out. Like there are still things going through the criminal justice system. So there's still things that they could actively research at this point. In fact, I have students doing this right now in my blended class. And so I give them the starter topic. I lay the foundation by having them watch. I have a Rachel Maddow special on the Flint water crisis, where she just sets up the mechanism, like how did the lead get into the water, like all the science of it, so they kind of have a sense of that. And then their job is to just go do some research, go look at resources online. I give them a few starter URLs, but then their job is to just look around for supplemental information about the Flint water crisis, where we are now. And they could come at it from whatever aspect. Like if they're a criminal justice major, they can look at the criminal justice ramifications of who's been prosecuted for what happened in Flint. If they're a medical student, they can take the lead contamination aspect. So they just get to go and do some brainstorming and then think about what are the causes or what are the consequences and start framing it in causal questions, which is what I'm ultimately trying to get them to do for the assignment. But it just gives them a starter topic, and then they have that space during the blended day to really go off on a path that's most interesting to them in a setting that's hopefully quiet enough for them to be reflective and thoughtful. I use the blended day for brainstorming a lot. So another thing I do is maybe just send them to Pew Research Center, where they can jump online and just look for topics that interest them. And again, we could do that in class as well, but it really works well on the blended day because then they're off on their own and they have that time to be reflective and thoughtful and really dig into things that interest them. So one of the things that we want to express is that we have colleagues here who they know we teach blended learning. And so they'll come to us and say, I'd really like to blend, but it seems like a lot of work. I have to change all my assignments. So our advice would be just start small. Like you don't have to change all your assignments all at once. A lot of times things we're doing in the classroom are pretty easily just turned into an online assignment for them. But eventually you really want to work to the place where, like Laura said, you're having them go shadow, you're having them go out and do things, or you're really harnessing the reflection that blended day can give them. But at first, maybe just think of 1 or 2 assignments. Think about, is there an activity or content that maybe students have a particularly hard time with the delivery of, and how could you change that up? How could you use blended to work for you so that the students are more engaged and diving deeper into that content? So that's a good place to start, rather than think about changing 15 or 16 weeks of a course. Think about 1 or 2 activities.
So one of the other questions that we tend to get a lot is, well, yeah, you are allowing these students to have this blended learning experience, but how do you know that they're actually doing something and not just using that as a day off? And so we really had to think about building in an accountability piece. How will we have students kind of report back what they did on that day so that we know that they're not just, well, we're in Phoenix, Arizona, so sitting by the pool, it's very sunny and there's nice weather out today. So how do we know that they're not sitting by the pool and that they're actually participating in the activities that we are asking them to participate in? So one of the things that we do is we keep saying the online day, or how we kind of modify it into an online day. We'll often post like a discussion forum or something like that in the classroom where students have to complete whatever it is that they needed to complete, and then go in and respond to a prompt that we post, or post their work for the day. I had students working today in my general psychology class. They were making conditioning videos with other peers in the class. And so when they were all finished making their videos, and then they were done kind of creating their brief presentations that they will be sharing on Tuesday, they needed to post that to the discussion forum to let me know that they all worked together. The beauty of a video is I can see if you were in it or not. So that works really well. And then they also have this ability to come back into class on Tuesday next week and share with the people sitting around them what they did. So I don't have time to have, all of the students share their videos to the entire class. So I provide them about 15 minutes in the beginning of class just to share what they did with maybe another group or 2 around them, which they find to be really fun. They like to watch themselves in videos and their peers in videos. But that also increases that accountability too. Like, you need something to share, or you're going to be sitting there and everybody will kind of notice that you don't have something. We also attach some points to it, but they don't tend to be a lot of points for these assignments. We want them to be learning. And we want them to be kind of motivated by the activity itself. So we don't attach a lot of points, but some points tends to help also to make sure that they're doing what it is that they need to be doing. So like I said, we will, whatever it is that they were asked to do in the next class, I'll ask them to kind of discuss that with people around them. Sometimes I'll have, maybe 2 or 3 groups get together, share what they did, select the best group or vote on the one that they felt was the best, and then maybe have just like 4 or 5 groups report out to the whole class instead of all of the groups. So we do that, and that's a good way to have them kind of report back.
One of the other techniques that I use to build in that accountability, because again, I teach composition, so I'm usually asking them to do some writing, and if I ask them to post in the forum, the daunting nature of going in and replying to 90 posts did not seem like a fun endeavor, but I still wanted students to know that their posts were being read, and I wanted to build in that accountability. So actually one of the techniques that Laura came up with is the next class period. So if we have our blended day on Thursday and they're posting on that Thursday, then the next time we meet on Tuesday, I'll just take 5 minutes at the beginning of class, maybe 10 minutes, and I'll screenshot a couple of the better posts or the ones that were more representative of what was going on in the forum, and I'll put those up on the PowerPoint for my class, and we'll talk about those, and we'll kind of go through and ask some questions. And I tell the students, I'm never gonna put this up to embarrass you. If you have something up there, it's because it was representative or you did a good job. And it helps to refresh where we were, right? It brings us back together. This is what we did individually on the blended day, kind of pulls our class back together for the next assignment. And then it also lets them know, without me replying to all 90 individual posts, they know I read through them, because here, look, here's 3 of them. So one of the other, again, when we have colleagues come to us, because we've been on blended learning for a couple of years now, and we have colleagues come to us with looking for suggestions or kind of toying with the idea of starting blended learning and not quite sure how to do it. I have to say, one of the best things that can happen if you're interested in blended learning is to start with a colleague. Don't do it by yourself. And we had the benefit of having a really nice collaboration when we first started blended learning, because it only happens within one college here at our university, and there's only a handful of teachers that do it. But all of the teachers that started to to beta test blended learning at our university met with our dean, and we'd meet once a month, or once or twice a month, and just talk about what was going on in our classrooms. And especially at the beginning, when we were hitting problems like, how do I reply to 90 posts or things like that, we weren't sure what to do with. We would just kind of bounce it out to the group, and people were like, oh, I have that same problem, and this is what I did, or I found I tried this instead. And so it was really informal. Even though our dean was there, it wasn't a dean-led meeting. It was really a faculty-led meeting, and he was just there to observe and see what was working. And then we developed best practices, and we were all interdisciplinary. We had physics teachers and accounting teachers. Like, we had all sorts of disciplines. So it was really useful to hear, oh, this is how I approach this problem, or just have a sounding board, or a griping board sometimes, and to just brainstorm together and really develop like a set of best practices. That's one of the best things that helped support us as we implemented blended learning here.
So that really kind of wraps up our presentation. We were going to just provide a little bit of time. If you had any questions that we could answer for you, we would be happy to do that now. You're as silent as our 90 student seat classes when we ask if there's questions. Well, thank you so much for your attendance. We hope that some of the information that we shared today can be of use to you. And if you have any questions, you're welcome to reach out to us, and we can do our best to provide resources or support to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And we'll stay on for questions if any come up.
Yeah, hey, as Lene said, lots to think about. We appreciate your ideas. I think it did generate a lot to think about for everyone. Well, if we have no further comments, hey, we can wrap it up. Looks like it. So Maria and Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, guys, I'll see you tomorrow for the last day of our conference. Hope you'll join us.